Hey y'all, welcome to Sandy's Library. I'm Sandy.
And I'm Sara. In this video we're going to take a look at Session 7 of the raw material.
And don't forget about our dogs. They can be noisy sometimes, so please ignore them. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. This is the Law of One, Session 7, original recording date January 25th, 1981.
I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of our infinite Creator. I communicate now.
Q&A number 1. Question. You mentioned that you were a member of the Confederation of Planets. What avenues of service or types of service are available to members of the Confederation? Would you describe some of them?
I am Ra. I am assuming that you intend the service which we of the Confederation can offer rather than the service which is available to our use.
This is the only part of Q&A number 1 that you need to focus on. They just told us their way is not the only way. Nevertheless, back to Ra.
The service available for our offering to those who call us is equivalent to the square of the distortion need of that calling divided by or integrated with the basic law of one in its distortion, indicating the free will of those who are not aware of the unity of creation.
And the rest of that is just a bunch of double talk. So, on to Q&A number 2. Question. From this, I am assuming that the difficulty you have contacting this planet at this time is the mixture of people here. Some being aware of the unity, some not. And for this reason, you cannot come openly or give any proof of your contact. Is this correct?
I am Ra. As we just repeated through this instrument, we must integrate all of the portions of your social memory complex in its illusory disintegration form. Then the product of this can be seen as the limit of our ability to serve. We are fortunate that the law of service squares the desires of those who call. Otherwise, we would have no beingness in this time-space at this present continuum of the illusion. In short, you are basically correct. The thought of not being able is not a part of our basic thought form complex towards your peoples, but rather is a maximum consideration of what is possible.
That's the end of Ra's answer. And it sounds to me like Ra's getting a little testy with Don. Guess they're tired of re-answering the same old questions over and over again just because they've been reworded in a different way. Nevertheless, on to Q&A number 3. Question. By squared, do you mean that if 10 people call, you can count that when comparing it to the planetary ratio of people as 100, squaring 10, getting 100. Is that correct?
I am Ra. This is incorrect. The square is sequential. 1, 2, 3, 4, each squared by the next number.
Q&A number 4. And y'all, I'm sorry to say, the beginning of Don's question is inaudible. But we do have the last bit of it, so let's get on with that. Don says, use an example. If only 10 entities on Earth required your services, how would you compute their call using this square rule?
We would square 1 10 sequential times, raising the number to the 10th square.
Q&A number 5. Question. what would be the result of this calculation? And y'all, after a 24-second pause, Ra, or whoever, says,
the result is difficult to transmit. It is 1012 approximately. The entities who call are sometimes not totally unified in their calling, and thus the squaring is slightly less. Thus there is a statistical loss over a period of call. However, perhaps you may see by this statistically corrected information the squaring mechanism.
Yeah, that's a whole bunch of double talk. So let's move on to Q&A number 6. Question: about how many entities at present are calling from planet Earth for your services? And before we hear the answer, I just want y'all to remember we're talking about 1981, not 2022. We have to remember that. Okay, on to the response.
I am called personally by 352,000. The Confederation in its entire spectrum of entity complexes is called by 632 million of your mind-body-spirit complexes. These numbers have been simplified.
That's a lot of peoples. Q&A number 7. Question: can you tell me what the result of the application of the law of squares is to those figures?
The number is approximately meaningless in the finite sense, as there are many, many digits. It, however, constitutes a great calling which we, of all creation, feel and hear as if our own entities were distorted towards a great and overwhelming sorrow. It demands our service.
That's what I like to call double talk. Nevertheless, on to Q&A number 8. Question: at what point would this calling be enough for you to openly come among the people on Earth? How many entities on Earth would have to call the Confederation?
I am Ra. We do not calculate the possibility of coming among your peoples by the numbers of calling, but by a consensus among an entire societal memory complex which has become aware of the infinite consciousness of all things. This has been possible among your peoples only in isolated instances. In the case wherein a social memory complex which is servant of the Creator sees this situation and has an idea for the appropriate aid which can only be done among your peoples, the social memory complex, desiring this project, lays it before the Council of Saturn. If it is approved, quarantine is lifted.
That's the end of the answer. And I have just 2 words for y'all: lab rats. Now, on to Q&A number 9. Question: I have a question here, I believe, about that council from Jim. Who are the members and how does the council function?
I am Ra. The members of the council are representatives from the Confederation and from those vibratory levels of your inner planes, bearing responsibility for your third density. The names are not important because there are no names.
Well, that's convenient. I mean, really? Could they be more evasive? Nevertheless, back to Ra.
Your mind-body-spirit complexes request names, and so, in many cases, the vibratory sound complexes, which are consonant with the vibratory distortions of each entity, are used. However, the name concept is not part of the council.
Man, I'm having a hard time reconciling that names are not part of the council. That shows a level of involvement that I honestly cannot comprehend. But let's let them continue.
If names are requested, we will attempt them. However, not all have chosen names. In number, the council that sits in constant session, though varying in its members by means of balancing, which takes place what you would call irregularly, is 9. That is the session council.
The Council of 9. Where have I heard that before? Oh yeah, channeling sponsored by the U.S. government back in the 1950s. It's in the declassified CIA documents. Go look it up. Anyway, back to Ra.
To back up this council, there are 24 entities which offer their services as requested. These entities faithfully watch and have been called the guardians.
Yeah, but who and what are they guarding? And for what purpose? That's a question that I wish Don had thought to ask. Nevertheless, back to Ra.
The council operates by means of what you would call telepathic contact with the oneness or unity of the 9. The distortions blending harmoniously so that the law of one prevails with ease. When a need for thought is present, the council retains the distortion complex of this need, balancing it as described, and then recommends what it considers as appropriate action. This includes 1. The duty of admitting social memory complexes to the Confederation. 2. Offering aid to those who are unsure how to aid the social memory complex, requesting aid in a way consonant with both the call, the law, and the number of those calling. That is to say, sometimes the resistance of the call. 3. Internal questions in the council are determined. These are the prominent duties of the council. They are, if in any doubt, able to contact the 24, who then offer consensus, judgment, thinking to the council. The council then may reconsider any question.
That's the end of Ra's answer. Kind of sounds like the council in the spirit world. And I haven't made up my mind yet about the 24 guardians. But anyway, on to Q&A number 10. Question: is the Council of 9 the same 9 that was mentioned in this book? And in brackets on the transcript it says, questioner gestures to Yori.
I am Ra. The Council of 9 has been retained in semi-undistorted form by 2 main sources, that known in your naming as Mark and that known in your naming as Henry. In one case, the channel became the scribe. In the other, the channel was not the scribe. However, without the aid of the scribe, the energy would not have come to the channel.
So here, the scribe has quite a different meaning than what I'm used to. But anyway, that's the end of Ra's answer. So let's move on to Q&A number 11. Question: the names you spoke of, are they Mark Probert and Henry Puharich?
I am Ra. This is correct.
Never heard of either one of them, which doesn't mean a whole lot. So let's move on to Q&A number 12. Question: I am interested in the application of the law of one as it pertains to free will and what I would call the advertising done by UFO contact with the planet. That is, the Council has allowed the quarantine to be lifted many times over the past 30 years. This seems to me to be a form of advertising for what we are doing right now so that more people will be awakened. Am I correct?
I am Ra. It will take a certain amount of untangling of conceptualization of your mental complex to reform your query into an appropriate response. Please bear with us. The Council of Saturn has not allowed the breaking of quarantine in the time-space continuum you mentioned. There is a certain amount of landing taking place. Some of these landings are of your peoples. Some are of the entities known to you as the group of Orion. Secondly, there is permission granted not to break quarantine by dwelling among you, but to appear in thought form capacity for those who have eyes to see.
Look, whether they're living among us or appearing to us in thought form, they're still affecting us humans in pretty much the same damn way. Nevertheless, back to Ra.
Thirdly, you are correct in assuming that permission was granted at the time-space in which your first nuclear device was developed and used for Confederation members to minister unto your peoples in such a way as to cause mystery to occur.
Hold the phone, y'all. Did you hear what they just said? They got permission to break quarantine and gave humans the knowledge to build nuclear weapons so they can use it as a way to minister to us. Remember they said that, y'all. Tuck it away for later reference. And I'm going to let y'all decide what you think minister means in this case. Nevertheless, back to Ra.
This is what you mean by advertising and is correct. The mystery and unknown quality of the occurrences we are allowed to offer have the hoped for intention of making your peoples aware of infinite possibility. When your peoples grasp infinity, then and only then can the gateway be opened to the law of one.
Okay, so that's the end of Ra's answer. And for me, there's a lot of double talk going on here. They say the Council of Saturn has not allowed the breaking of quarantine. Yet, they also say that some of the UFO sightings Don spoke of were of the Orion group. So, if they had not allowed the breaking of quarantine, how'd the Orion group get in? It's all double talk, y'all. Double talk. And remember, they're out to harvest us. But anyway, on to Q&A number 13. Question. You mentioned both our people and those of Orion coming here. Can you expand on that?
I am Ra. Your thought complexes did not match your vibratory sound complexes. We are unable to respond. Please restate your query.
Ra would have us believe Don doesn't know what he's talking about. Q&A number 14. Question. I'll just ask about Orion. You mentioned Orion as a source of some of the contacts of UFOs. Can you tell me something of that contact, its purpose?
I am Ra. Consider, if you will, a simple example of intentions which are bad good. This example is Adolf. This is your vibratory sound complex. The intention is to presumably unify by choosing the distortion complex called elite from a social memory complex and then enslaving by various effects those who are seen as the distortion of not elite.
Okay, so Ra's saying that Adolf Hitler was a member of the Orion group. Back to Ra.
There is then the concept of taking the social memory complex thus weeded and adding it to a distortion thought of by the so-called Orion group as an empire.
Yeah, right. Like the Confederation don't think of themselves as an empire. Nevertheless, back to Ra.
The problem facing them is that they face a great deal of random energy released by the concept of separation. This causes them to be vulnerable as the distortions amongst their own members are not harmonized.
That's the end of Ra's answer. And they would have us believe the Orion group are not as effective as they are because the Orion group are neither harmonized nor polarized. And that's all fine and well, even if it is hogwash. But what does it have to do with Don's question? Which was basically, can you tell me the purpose of the Orion group's contact? Nevertheless, on to the next Q&A. Which, by the way, it sometimes surprises me how Don so easily moves on from one question to the next when Ra never really answered his previous question. Maybe that's why Don repeats himself so much. But anyway, Q&A number 15. Question: what is the density of the Orion group?
I am Ra. Like the Confederation, the densities of the mass consciousnesses which comprise that group are varied. There are a very few third density, a larger number of fourth density, a similarly large number of fifth density, and very few sixth density entities comprising this organization. Their numbers are perhaps 1/10 hours at any point in the space-time continuum, as the problem of spiritual entropy causes them to experience constant disintegration of their social memory complexes. Their power is the same as ours.
That's kind of contradictory, ain't it? I mean, Ra claims the Orion group's numbers are smaller and they can't keep themselves together. Yet, their power is the same as Ra's. But anyway, back to Ra.
The law of one blinks neither at the light or the darkness, but is available for service to others and service to self. However, service to others results in service to self.
Think about that for a minute. The law of one favors neither the light nor the darkness. It is freely and fully available to the service to others and service to self paths in equal measure. This sounds to me like the law of one has no preference when it comes to which path we travel down, no matter how much Ra tries to convince us otherwise. Anyway, back to Ra.
Thus preserving and further harmonizing the distortions of those entities seeking intelligent infinity through these disciplines. Those seeking intelligent infinity through the use of service to self creates the same amount of power, but as we said, have constant difficulty because of the concept of separation, which is implicit in the manifestations of the service to self, which involve power over others. This weakens and eventually disintegrates the energy collected by such mind-body-spirit complexes who call the Orion group and the social memory complexes which comprise the Orion group. It should be noted, carefully pondered, and accepted that the law of one is available to any social memory complex which has decided to strive together for any seeking of purpose, be it service to others or service to self. The laws, which are the primal distortions of the law of one, then are placed into operation, and the illusion of space-time is used as a medium for the development of the results of those choices freely made. Thus all entities learn, no matter what they seek. All learn the same, some rapidly, some slowly.
That's the end of Ra's very enlightening answer. And I hope folks really pay attention to this someday. I mean, they've told us the law of one favors neither the light nor the dark. And what was it they said? It should be noted, carefully pondered, and accepted that the law of one is available to any social memory complex which has decided to strive together for any seeking of purpose, be it service to others or service to self. Let that sink in, because they said all entities learn no matter what they seek. All learn the same, some rapidly, some slowly. Nevertheless, on to Q&A number 16. Question. Using an example, a fifth density group or social memory complex of the Orion group, what was their previous density before they became fifth density? And really, Dawn? I mean, they've already told us that densities are sequential. Plus, some things are just obvious. But let's get on to Ra's answer.
I am Ra. The progress through densities is sequential. A fifth density social memory complex would be comprised of mind-body-spirit complexes harvested from fourth density.
Like I said, some things are just obvious. Back to Ra.
Then the conglomerate or mass mind-body-spirit complex does its melding, and the results are due to the infinitely various possibilities of combination of distortions.
Doesn't matter what you do, y'all, so long as you do something. Q&A number 17. Question. I'm trying to understand how a group such as the Orion group would progress. I was of the opinion that a closer understanding of the law of one created the condition of acceptability, moving, say, from our third density to the fourth in our transition now. And I'm trying to understand how it would be possible if you were in the Orion group and pointed toward self-service. How you would progress, say, from the third density to the fourth. What learning would be necessary for that? And y'all, I'm not sure if Dawn and Ra are even on the same page. But let's see what Ra says.
I am Ra. This is the last question of length for this instrument at this time. You will recall that we went into some detail as to how those not oriented toward seeking service for others, yet nevertheless found and could use the gateway to intelligent infinity. This is true at all densities in our octave.
Look, y'all, the only difference between the service to others and the service to self paths is semantics. But anyway, back to Ra.
We cannot speak for those above us, as you would say, in the next quantum or octave of beingness. This is, however, true of this octave of densities. The beings are harvested because they can see and enjoy the light love of the appropriate density. Those who have found this light, love, love, light without benefit of a desire for service, nevertheless, by the law of free will, have the right to the use of that light, love for whatever purpose.
There is no right or wrong way to serve the Creator, and we'd all do well to remember that. Back to Ra.
Also, it may be inserted that there are systems of study which enable the seeker of separation to gain these gateways. This study is as difficult as the one which we have described to you, but there are those with the perseverance to pursue the study just as you desire to pursue the difficult path of seeking to know in order to serve. The distortion lies in the fact that those who seek to serve the self are seen by the law of one as precisely the same as those who seek to serve others, for are all not one.
Now remember they said that. As far as the law of one is concerned, there is no difference between the paths. No difference. None. The law of one does not view things as good or bad.
To serve yourself and to serve other is a dual method of saying the same thing if you can understand the essence of the law of one. At this time, we would answer any brief questions you may have.
Well, that's the end of Ra's answer, and boy, do I got a lot to say about it. But I'm just going to give y'all the cliff notes. So, according to Ra, doesn't matter which side of the fence you're sitting on. If you've found your way to intelligent infinity, you can use it for what the hell ever you want. And guess what? The law of one and the infinite creator don't care what you do with it either. Remember what Ra said. Those who seek to serve the self are seen by the law of one as precisely the same as those who seek to serve others. Let that sink in. I've told y'all before, the infinite creator doesn't care what we do, so long as we do something. And don't ever forget, y'all, Ra is trying to harvest us. They want our soul energy. Q&A number 18. Question: is there anything we can do to make the instrument more comfortable?
I am Ra. There are small adjustments you may make. However, we are now able to use this instrument with minimal distortion and without depleting the instrument to any significant extent. Do you wish to ask further?
Q&A number 19. Question: we do not wish to overly tire the instrument. Thank you very much. That was very helpful. We will continue in the next session taking up this point. I believe that I'm beginning to understand the progression. Thank you very much. Well, let's hope so, Dawn. But on to Ra.
I am Ra. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one creator, Adonai.
This brings us to the end of session 7, and I think I've said all I need to say about it.
Thanks for joining us today. We'll be back soon with session 8.
Later, Gators.